Call meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, August 11th. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Austin City Planning Commission. We have a couple of open public three open public hearings on the agenda tonight. But before we get to that, I'll ask the commissioners if you've had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting. And if there are any changes, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to accept the meeting minutes.
I have a motion to approve the minutes from Commissioner Bremner.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Nelson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, the first item on our agenda is to consider a request from Torgerson Properties Incorporated, 103 15th Avenue Northwest, Suite 200, Wilmer, Minnesota, 56201, for a final review of a rezone of their property located at 1701 4th Street Northwest from a B2 Community District Business District to a PDB, Planned Development Business. This action is an initial step in creating a commercial common interest community and to further develop the property.
This should be familiar to some of you who were here for the preliminary review of this planned unit development. The preliminary review included all of the materials that are here except for the green space calculation. The Planning Commission recommended that the council approve the preliminary plan. The council did approve the preliminary plan. So this is just the final kind of hashing out some of the questions that the Planning Commission had or the council had, and maybe some last minute things that hadn't been noted at the time that we presented the preliminary plan. The City's Edge Architects developed the site plans and the proposal for this project. They have two representatives here tonight, Jesse Mesner and Brian Johnson. And if you have any questions about the site plans that were included, they would be able to give me some technical assistance and maybe describing some of those to you. But the overall purpose that we have here is to determine whether this planned unit development fits the comprehensive plan, which we've discussed before. It does fit within our comprehensive plan development requirements. The area where the planned unit development would be sited has the same existing use as is proposed in this planned unit development. It's commercial use. The existing structures are Holiday Inn, Days Inn, and Perkins, and they would be adding another hotel to that site. We discussed that the underlying zoning is a B2 zoning district, which is a business district. The planned unit development is like an overlay, and it allows some flexibility with the zoning. I have a list under considerations in the staff report detailing some of the areas where the planned unit development would not precisely follow our zoning code, and they would need some agreement from the Planning Commission or recommendations to allow these variances from the zoning code. These were all discussed at prior meeting, other than the green space. The green space requirement is 20%, and what's shown in this diagram is 15.8%, which is 4.2% less than required. I was just talking to the gentleman from City's Edge Architects earlier, and they said they miscalculated a little. It would be a little less than 4% variance.
Do you know what that would be?
I don't know the exact number.
Okay.
But in any event, it's pretty close to what is existing now. The just a couple other things to add is that the area would be developed as a single lot moving forward. The developer would agree and be bound to using the zoning code that currently exists, other than the areas where they were given specific approval to vary from those requirements. If there was ever a need to modify the plan, if it was something very minimal, I could give authority to change the plan. If it was something very complicated or something that required more review, it would come back as an amendment to the final plan. But they are trying to get the plan as complete as possible at this point, moving forward, so that they are ensured that they have appropriate approval to go ahead and do the project. So you would be making a recommendation to the council whether to approve the final plan with these additional considerations where they are varying from the current zoning requirements. And I should note, I have not ever gotten any comments from anyone about this in a negative or positive way, I guess. And as well,
So Holly, is the proposed development, the future hotel, I'll say, it looks like it's being placed in an area right now that is totally parking area.
right,
So
yes.
is that green space, where does that come from? I mean, there's none there now, right? Is there additional green space required?
They're wiping out this. That's all green space right now.
Oh, right by the walk?
Mhm.
That's basically what's happening, they're wiping out.
Okay.
And there are
So
few
we're
other
losing that.
places. Yeah.
Okay.
Can we require that they put in some large trees to help offset the fact they don't have as much green space?
Yeah, you could certainly ask them to do that.
Well, it looks like they have parking on both, I mean, I'm guessing that's parking on both sides.
Yep.
And so with the,
Yeah, if you have any thoughts on ways to make that more acceptable, you can certainly
When they're using this. This is
make some
green space right
recommendations.
here.
It can be
There's
either
few
a
other little
flat-out
spots like
approval,
here and here.
it can be a denial, or it can be an approval with some suggestions or,
So Holly, when this first came before us, we gave them the conditional, and then it went to the city council. And then the city council, when I'm looking at the staff report, we have conditions 1 through 6. Are these the ones, the concerns that came up from the city council discussion?
No, actually, those were some of the things that in our review, the staff review of their site plans, that we noted were, were not compatible with our current zoning rules. So those were things that would either need to be, I guess, approved as part of the plan, which is allowed. That's kind of part of why we do a plan
Staff
unit
report.
development. Or it would, or be denied. So it's part of that process. The council really didn't have any additional questions other than just to make sure that the staff had plenty of time to review all of their plans, and that any additional plans that came in, that we would have a chance to review
Well, and I
them.
think too, from the meeting that I attended, we didn't really have a lot of concerns either. And quite honestly, in terms of putting in trees and that type of stuff, I'm not an architect, I'm not a landscape architect. So I would be a little hesitant to say that my judgment should prevail in terms of that, but I understand what the commissioner is saying.
I don't know if the architects would be interested in discussing it.
state your name and address for the record, please.
Jesse Messner, City's Edge Architects. So I'll just start back at this green space plan. So Holly mentioned that there's a couple items that we didn't have considered in this green space, and that is around the building, around the entire perimeter of the building, there's landscaping. So we are a little closer to the green space requirement. The comment about the trees, I'll put the landscape plan up there so you can see.
While you're
It's
looking
in
for
the-
that, did you happen to know what the actual percentage was that you were off? Holly wasn't quite sure, but do you have that?
Yeah, we are, so right now we're at 15.8.
Okay, and that's what
so-
she had said, but,
Yeah, we're 4.2 less than required.
okay, so that is correct then.
Um,
Okay.
But we didn't, so the comment that he made about the landscaping around the building, that's not in that number. So it'd actually be, closer to 4 or maybe just a little under 4.
Okay, so it's very minor.
I think you have the landscape plan in the packet, but I'll
Yeah.
just,
Which,
L100 is the landscape plan.
what you're saying is that the green space plan that you used didn't include the landscaping around the building, which would appear from that particular drawing versus the L100, which shows the landscape.
right.
Okay.
And you can see that we have some, maybe we could consider 2 overstory trees out at the drop-off portico area, but, yeah, the rest of the stuff wouldn't be overstory.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing. I'm just looking at the layout there of how that would be set off with some plantings.
Mhm.
Any other questions from commissioners, or do you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, that's really it.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify with Holly and Mr. Byam that by rezoning this to planned development B versus B2, going forward in the future, that doesn't mean that as a planned development, it's just a free-for-all to do whatever they want. Everything still falls back to B2 initially for approval on anything they want to develop or change going forward.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I think you need to think about it this way. For a planned unit development, whether it's business or residential or industrial, the idea is you're going to create a unique set of rules that will only apply to this property. And those rules are going to be slightly different than the rules that are generally applicable. So for instance, for this property, it's similar to if you had a list of a bunch of variances and you had to consider them all in a row. And instead, we say, no, we're going to look at this as an entire package, and we're going to say, does this all apply, or does this all make sense in the area? After that, those rules that you approve, those govern the property thereafter. Those areas where you didn't have to approve anything different than the regular code would require, the regular rules will apply unless they come back and ask for that amendment.
And then they also, they wouldn't be able to sell off just a portion of that property. It's all part of that one planned unit development, so it's all being considered as one for our zoning purposes and for this plan.
So at this time, it looks like the only 2 variances involved would be the building height and the green space. If I'm seeing everything, right?
The green space, yes, and the building height, and the setbacks would have been, they would have been unable to put a building there with our rules of setbacks, with the 2 lots, without combining them under this plan.
But by combining them, they meet the setback.
They do,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I will ask for a motion, and again, this is a recommendation to the city council.
I'll make a recommendation. I'd like to recommend to the city council that the petitioner, that we approve the request for this rezone from a B2 Community Business District to a PDB with the recommendation of the attached staff report, items 1 through 6.
And can you add Exhibit A?
And Exhibit A.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Spainhour,
I'll second.
second from Commissioner Lutz. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Our next item is to consider requests from Northland Investors and Northland Investments, 3112 Gulf Road, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 54701, to amend a conditional use permit increasing the height of a freeway-oriented sign in a B2 Community Business District from 55 feet to 80 feet. This action is pursuant to Austin City Code Sections 4.50, Schedule 6, Subdivision 5A, 4, and Section 11.56, Subdivisions 1, 2, and 5.
All right, so this would also be familiar to some of you on the Planning Commission. The Hardee's restaurant that's being constructed right now and is almost finished is the reason for this request. This is actually, this is Sign Art is petitioning for the sign and for the conditional use permit on behalf of Northland Investors, the owners of the restaurant. They initially received a conditional use permit for a sign that was 55 feet tall. They found out after looking at the site to begin their construction for the freeway-oriented sign that they were close to a water main and had to be at least 15 feet from that with their footings. So that's required a relocation of the freeway sign, and when the sign was relocated, it became pretty much invisible at 55 feet with the way the trees are oriented on the property. And I believe that's mostly for traffic traveling west. So traveling from the east, I didn't look for sure, but there probably is a little bit better visibility from that direction. So they're asking to add another 25 feet to the height of the sign. The only comments that I have are that there are other signs in that area that do either meet or exceed that height. And that they would have to make sure that any additional permits or notices that were required would be obtained. Not that I know of any that are required.
So Holly, that was my question, was what's the current height, do we know, for Burger King and Quick Trip?
Looks
What I
like-
had was, I have a record of Burger King being 75 feet and Quick Trip, double check here.
50-plus feet. You know.
Yeah, 50 plus, and I'm not sure what that means. I did look it up, and I'm not sure if Quick Trip used a freeway sign that was
Yeah, I was
already
gonna say,
existing.
They're kind of off too, so.
Yeah,
okay.
there was a gas station there prior to Quick Trip,
Mm-hmm.
and they may have used the existing sign that was there.
And then
many
one
years
other
ago.
question, when you said that they were at the water main and then they had to go back, what was it, 25 feet? So what was the elevation change then?
There really wasn't any elevation change, I don't think.
The grade's about the same there.
So why are they asking for an additional 25 feet then if the grade is remaining the same, it's just being,
Because of the
is it because
trees.
the trees are?
The trees on
okay.
the east side of the property there.
Okay,
Trees block it.
Yeah, the trees ended where the original location was, so it
Okay.
wasn't.
I have a photograph of the site that shows the trees, if that'd be helpful.
it would be actually.
I did actually go out there and try to take some photos, but then I chickened out on the interstate.
No, you were probably wise, Holly.
If you just state your name and address for the record, please.
Matt Snyder,
What's your address, please?
2933 Mondovi Road, Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
And I don't know if this shows up very well, but in this general vicinity right here is a stake that indicates where center of that sign was intended to be. The water main is to the south of that. So that pushes the edge of our sign footing, I would say approximately 25 feet to the south. So the center of that interstate sign is going to be orchestrated right in this general vicinity here.
And do we know how tall those trees are?
I would guess that those trees are 50 feet in height or better, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay,
And I think that's pretty accurate.
okay.
Just for comparison, this is a photograph of the Quick Trip sign across the street. And Today I went and measured this base section of the pole that goes to right here, and that's 14 feet from grade. So if I scale that up, I come up to 86 feet to approximately center of that sign right now. I would say the overall height of that sign is approximately 90 feet in height.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So we're not, we're not totally out of line with the.
The subway sign is 80 feet too.
Yeah, I'm looking
so
at
it's
that
right
too,
under.
so I think we're in range of what's there. Any other questions from the commissioners?
We had a citizen here last time when we talked about this sign from the neighborhood behind Hardee's.
Yep, it was Jim Stowe.
Have
He,
they been re-notified about the
yes,
change?
all of the neighbors have been notified again of the amendment of the conditional use permit. And I did speak to Mr. Stowe on another matter, and this came up, and he just said he was just concerned that Mayo be aware of all of the possible obstacles in that area. And I had spoken to Mayo after our last meeting, and they said they have certain FAA guidelines that would, ensure their safety in flying in that zone. So they said we really didn't need to notify them, but she appreciated it, so
Okay.
that was the information that I was able to get.
That's good to know also.
Okay, anything else? If not, and is this a recommendation, or is this
It's a motion to approve.
The decision, of the planning commission, so
Okay.
motion to approve or not.
So I'll ask for a motion on this.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for this sign. It appears, I have to say, when I first read this, I kind of had my eyebrows raised a little bit. It seemed like 25 feet was kind of large, but actually, when looking at the Burger King and the Quick Trip and the information that you provided and the visual was extremely helpful, so thank you for coming prepared. We always appreciate that. It helps kind of take away any questions that we might have. So I would make a motion to approve the conditional use permit.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Spainhower, a second from Commissioner Brammer.
Can I, before we take a vote, can I add to that too, to make sure that the staff recommendations are adhered to also?
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll note that. Okay, again, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to consider a request from James Dugan, 400 15th Street Southeast, Austin, Minnesota, for a 14-foot variance from Austin City Zoning Code, Section 11.30, Subdivision 5A, which requires a 20-foot rear yard setback.
This request was brought to us after Mr. Dugan had looked at the property, looked at several options that he may have available. Some of the options that he considered were either adding on to his house, orienting the garage east to west instead of north to south, and then maybe even moving to a new location. But he settled on the 26 by 38 foot garage that's oriented north to south. The diagram that I gave you, the aerial with the more close-up view, there's a black line that runs through the white rectangle. The white rectangle represents the proposed garage. The black line shows where the 20 feet from the rear lot line would fall approximately in the garage area. The petitioner has an existing garage and a small shed. He'd removed the small storage shed. Other than the 20-foot setback, he does meet the coverage requirement, square footage that's allowed. He also meets the accessory structure requirements, And the largest structure that's allowed is actually that exact dimension, the 26 by 38 foot structure. The detached garage is an allowed use in an R1 residential district. The use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, just kind of going through some of the requirements in the variance analysis. In this area, placing a garage in the rear yard setback does happen occasionally, and that's why I added that supplement to your materials, just showing kind of that area where this particular structure would be located. And that's outlined in white. And I counted approximately, and I was being generous too, so anything that was close, approximately 13% of the homes in that area had a detached garage located in the 20-foot setback area. I can't really explain that, whether those were all permitted or whether they got variances. I don't know for certain. And that would just kind of go to, I guess, looking at whether it fit within the neighborhood or seemed reasonable in that area. Some of the things that you should consider is just, the location of the structure, the permanence of the structure, the purpose of the setbacks, which we would say would be health and safety, distance from other buildings. At this time, the neighbor doesn't have anything close in the backyard, at least the one to the west doesn't have anything immediately next to the rear yard. The other reasons for setbacks are, some of them are just looking at the layout of the neighborhood and how things look, but otherwise also open space, and I think I already said protection of other structures. So the Planning Commission would make a recommendation to the council whether to approve or not approve the variance. The standard that you need to analyze is whether the variance is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the zoning code, whether the variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan, whether the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the provision, and that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the provision. Some of the practical difficulties would be shown by the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. The variance will not permit any use that is not allowed in the zoning district where the affected land is located. The variance will not alter the essential character of the surrounding area. And again, as always, economic considerations alone do not constitute, I put undue hardship, but it should be practical difficulties if reasonable use of the property exists.
So Holly, you mentioned the proximity to the neighbor there. There's no...
Yeah, it's actually a big, there's a...
Is there any objection at all from...
Yeah, considering I'm anticipating your question, considering the, how tightly all these lots are
Right.
located here, I sent out about 30 notices.
Okay.
I have not received any comments at all. And I know Mr. Dugan mentioned to me that he did talk to his neighbors about the garage location and size, and he had there were no objections. And I would say that was, I guess, some credibility to that based on the fact that I never got any calls from anyone.
Good.
I think also, do you know, what is this building here? I didn't look that up, do you know?
Which one?
It's not a house.
That's my neighbor.
That's just a residence?
I also asked, he lives on 14th Street.
It's a
He
very
used to be
big,
my
nice
neighbor.
home.
He used to give me a home a long time ago. But he's on numerous vacations, so I don't know where he's at right now.
Got it.
Personally, I look at this and I think of the hassle of keeping up a 5-foot strip of land behind
Yeah, I'll
the
maybe,
garage, and say, why don't we let them just build it on the property line and eliminate that hassle?
yeah, the minimum, yeah, you have to at least maintain a minimum of 5 feet, so But I'll let Mr. Dugan speak to some of the questions you may have, unless you have anything else.
I do. I question this first point, the variance is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning code.
I question that too.
But
Gentlemen, let
Oh,
me
wait.
just kind of say thank you for
Wait,
this evening.
he wanted to ask me one
I would
question.
ask
Okay.
Holly those
Um,
questions.
The general purpose and intent of the zoning code, yeah, I mean, you could probably look at it in a couple different ways. It's a garage being used in a residential area. So from that standpoint, it complies with the general purposes of the zoning code. But if you're looking at why do we have a rear yard setback, that could be maybe something that, an area where it doesn't work, because the rear yard setback is providing some distance between structures, or providing some open space and giving you a certain look in a neighborhood. In this instance, I guess I would look at the surrounding properties and whether it seems appropriate in this particular neighborhood.
So if we feel from the general neighborhood, we then can say it's the intent of the zoning code if the general neighborhood is no longer in compliance?
Yeah.
Maybe I can field
Sure.
that question, Commissioner Breimer. I certainly understand exactly what you're saying, and it is a hard part of the way the law is described. We have a zoning ordinance, and it has rules about setbacks, so how can violating the setback rule be in compliance with the rules? You have considered other sign and lighting appeals and things like that, and the ultimate decision was, because there isn't a residential property next to that location, and our zoning, the point of the zoning requirement about the sign or the lighting was to make sure we're not offensive to residential uses, that in this particular location, we're not going against the spirit and intent of why we have the rule. So in this particular case, I would throw out that there's a couple of reasons or spirits and intents for why we have these setbacks. One is safety and public safety, fireman safety. Can we get equipment in if we have to fight fires? Do we have structures that are built too close together so that a fire might jump from one to the next? And in this particular location, you can judge, well, in this neighborhood, is that concern something that is present here? That's one of the reasons why we have the generally applicable rule, but does it really apply here, or is there something different about here? One of the other reasons, though, is that our neighborhoods, it's viewed, at least from a governing standpoint, that having neighborhoods that are uniformly developed, all the front walls of houses are approximately the same distance from the street, so when you look up the street, things look like they're organized and neat and tidy. Similar in the backyards, when you go in your backyard and you look up and down your block, is there a sense of orderliness to it? That is also a reason why we have rear setbacks. We want the feelings in our backyards that it's open, that it's uniformly set back, that when you go into your backyard, you feel comfortable back there and you don't feel walled in by your neighbors having overdeveloped their properties. And to that point, I would just say, you can look at some of these photos and you can see how many buildings in the near vicinity are already at that location. So again, denying this one, are you really furthering the point of having the rule? Or is there something about this neighborhood where the rule isn't going to be respected anyway because there's so much that's been done here? On that point, I would note that even though we have what appears to be a beautiful large home with 4 lots for a backyard, it would appear, that's how it's developed today. And one of the considerations that you should think about is, to your point of building right on the property line or even closer, someday in the future, maybe there's a division there and there's a lot that's sold and another house is built who also wants to have a garage in their backyard, and now we have another building that wants to be built 5 feet on the other side of that line. Now, that may never happen, but we need to think long-term on these things and just think, would that be a problem if we had 10 feet separating 2 garages? would that pose any problem for public safety for getting equipment in there? Maybe, maybe not, but that's why we have the minimum of at least 5 feet, so that we never get buildings that are so close together that you can't have anything brought between from a firefighting standpoint.
There are a lot of neighborhoods in this country, though, that have 0 setbacks. And to me, that would make even more sense, particularly if a new neighbor came in to build a house, build it right against the property line with the other one, so that you don't have the challenge of that rat-infested area hiding behind those 2 houses or 2 garages that came in the future. The next question, though, comes to the question, the variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. You know, how do we look at that?
The comprehensive plan is very broad. So it is, it just is, it says, we want this area for residential use, or we want this area for commercial use, or, you know, and we are working on updating our comprehensive plan. The one that we have now does really need to have more detail and more guidance. So right now what we have is something that's just very broad, that indicates that that area is for residential use.
Yeah, unlike your first concern, I would suggest that one's almost a given. The question is, will be building a garage in the backyard of a residential neighborhood fit within the broad stroke, this is what we want this neighborhood to be? He's not proposing anything that's really wacky or totally, you know, unacceptable in this sort of a neighborhood.
Okay. All right. I'd like to hear from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm James Dugan. I'm property owner of 415th Street Southeast. If I can borrow that map real quick. Okay, this house is on 14th, and this house is also. These are all owned by this gentleman right here. His mother lives right there, just to make things clear. He also gave me the okay verbally, and my neighbor to the north. Pretty much everybody gave me the okay to build this. I went within the understanding of the 5-foot rule, and I went even further. I went 6 feet on one side, 7 feet on the other, and 10 feet from the north. So I was more than 5-foot rule, but I didn't know about the 40-foot variance. My question is, if I move that building closer to my house, why would I want to have a patio behind my garage?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here. So I'm trying to get the variance changed, because otherwise my patio would be a lot smaller by quite a few feet. The other thing is, I recently got married in May, so when you get married, you join everything else in, and it creates a lot of tight spots for everything. So we came to the conclusion that we needed a garage to create other usable space to put things. We only have a single-star driveway, so I don't have the option to make a double wide, which would have been the better option, but I don't have that. That's pretty much what's going on. And that's why I'm here to ask for permission to get a change. That's really what it's all about.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions at this time?
So this wouldn't be used to store vehicles?
I'm sorry?
Would this be used to store vehicles?
Yes. Vehicles,
Where do you gain access to the garage?
well, my wife's vehicle, my 2 trucks, I'm gonna get rid of one of them, but.
No, but where do you?
He's going to drive through the existing.
Okay, are you referring, I have right now 2 stall garages right now, 2 single stalls, one behind each other. I have a shop in my last stall, so I'm gonna move that into the new garage. That's gonna be a lot smaller, but I'll be able to move everything, because right now I can drive right through into the backyard, the way I have it set up.
I noticed you have a trailer in the front yard. I assume that's probably part of the reason you want to be able to drive through into that garage to store things like that.
Yes, that's part of the reason, but it was also at the request of the contractor, so he can drive through there himself, so I had to move it out of the way. So it's the only way he can get back there. I have a fenced-in yard and there's no opening. And I don't want to burden my neighbor's driveway by tearing down my fence and driving on his property.
I move that we approve the request.
I have a motion from Commissioner Bremner to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Lutz. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, people. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, do you have anything else for us, Holly?
No, I do not.
Okay. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion to adjourn and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.